While they are getting into position, I need to thank GPK Media, which publishes the Sierra County Sentinel and operates KCHX Radio, for broadcasting tonight's forum. Francis Luna, the editor and publisher of the Sentinel, has suggested the first question to be asked of the position for candidates, but we are going to start with their opening statements. Candidates, you're each going to have 1 minute to make your case for your election. And Mr. Fink is going first. If you're ready, you've got 60 seconds, sir.
Good evening, I'm Bill. Most people say Bill, but I'm not like those you get in the mail. I'm just Bill. Now, what I believe we need is a commission that is open to listening to the public. I'm not close enough?
No, you are.
Okay. What I believe is we need a commission that is open to listening to the public, working with the public, working with vendors. We need an open commission. In order to get this, I believe we need to have more than 3 minutes to speak a month. That just doesn't cut it, so we should have opening minutes available at least once or twice a month. My background is in milk safety and doing consulting for the federal government. So, I'm just Bill.
Thank you, Bill. We will move on down the line to Gina Kelly. 1 minute.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Gina Kelly, and I've been a homeowner here in TRC for the last 15 years. I'm running for City Commission because I have had 10 years of public service experience working with local governments to make things happen. This kind of experience has provided me with the knowledge to go out and get things done. We need to move forward in many, many ways. We've got a lot of problems that we need to fix, and I think I've got the experience just working with state agencies, with federal agencies, and with local governments to get things done. I've had a lot of experience working with state agencies and a ton of experience in tourism, so when we talk about that, I feel that I can answer those questions quite adequately. But I did start Main Street Choose Their Consequences. I want to mention that and give a shout out to Linda. I was the co-chair of the Healing Waters Trail Steering Committee, and I wrote the grant to get that trail built. I have served on the Government Affairs Committee for the New Mexico Hospitality Association, and I have served on regional marketing boards for the New Mexico Department of Tourism.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on to Sylvia Perone now. 1 minute, please.
Hi. I want to make TRC a great place for us to live in and for people to visit and maybe even move to. And I would like to begin by cleaning up the entire town and getting everybody on board, including the city, and get a new dump for the city and the county so we can take our trash to our local dump. And all those things can be done if we sit down together and do that. Then I want to open city government, all meetings in the evening, town halls, no secret meetings, and we need a lot more communication. This town does not have anybody who's writing press releases or info. You have to go to 25 different places. And please look at Sierra County, New Mexico Free Press on Facebook. That's my site. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Perone. Moving on now to Brendan Tolley. You've got 60 seconds, sir.
I've lived in Sierra County since 1993. My wife and I moved into the city proper 11 years ago. I've grown up here. I have worked in multiple city departments, so I'm well aware of how the city functions, how we operate. I have a background in finance. I did years in banking, so I understand dollars and cents, how to run a balance sheet, how to maintain a budget. I'm familiar with all of that. I'm very familiar with infrastructure issues. My current job is a lot of grunt work. I'm not afraid to pick up a shovel, not that that's a commissioned position per se, but I know how to work hard. What I bring to the table is that varied background, a lot of experiences to draw upon, and I also know how to take a practical approach, common sense applications of really big dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolley. So, round one of questions for our position 4 candidates. It is a fact that in recent years, the city's budget has been balanced by annually transferring somewhere between $2 and $4 million of utility revenue into the general fund to help cover payroll and other expenses. As Francis Luna has observed, the City of Truth or Consequences is basically a municipality funded by a utility company. We're going to start with Gina Kelly. Please answer Francis's question on fiscal responsibility. How can the city government become more self-sustaining without raising utility rates?
Well, that's going to be quite a challenge. I don't know if you're all aware, but there was a fund called the Small Cities Assistance Fund that provided $685,000 a year in funding to Truth or Consequences. Governor Martinez cut that way back to, I believe, about $150,000. So now we've got a shortfall of $500,000 every year right there that we need to make up. And you don't want to do that on the back of your utilities. It's legal, but it's not a good practice. What are our options? Our options are to improve our community so that we attract more residents here, to build the tax base, and then that way you don't have to keep taking out loans and you don't have to keep borrowing money and using the utility fund.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kelly. Ms. Barone, same question to you. How can city government become more self-sustaining without raising utility rates?
I think we should privatize the electric company and make it competitive in the world, and also get the transformers up and fix everything. Since we just spent $67,000 this month remodeling the electric company for the electric employees, so they have a nice driveway and an extra toilet in their office. Now, nobody asked me if they were going to spend $67,000, and they didn't ask you. We have to be involved in every financial decision and every other decision in this town, because they want to keep it secret from everybody else until it's done.
Thank you, Ms. Barone. Brendan Tolley, same question to you. How do we become more self-sustaining without raising utility rates?
Unfortunately, there's an incredible amount of waste in certain city departments. I'm not going to start naming names or pointing fingers, but we could definitely streamline quite a few of our operations. There are some projects right now that are hemorrhaging money. So we've got to apply a more sensible approach in how we spend city money. If something is hemorrhaging money and it's not benefiting us as a community, why would we continue to sink dollars into it? There's going to have to be some changes made, obviously. It's going to take looking into what are we spending, why are we spending it, and is it benefiting us? It's a profit and loss analysis, bottom line.
Thank you, Mr. Tolley. Bill Fink, you're up. How can city government become more self-sustaining without raising utility rates?
We can't. It's very simple. We just cannot become more self-reliant by raising our utility rates. We have to raise them. But at the same time, we need to cut the amount of money we're spending on other projects. We should look at everything, reducing the number of employees, which I know is not going to be too favorable. We should look at projects, pet projects, and sure, we may get a grant and we have to put matching funds in there, but does that make it worthwhile for the community to actually do it? Not always. Other things we could do. We could privatize some of our enterprises in the city, but that is not something I'm in favor of.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to round 2 of questions. This question for all 4 of you deals with transparency. Ms. Barone, you'll go first. It is a fact that City Commission meetings have been changed from evenings to 9 in the morning. Public comment is permitted at a single commission meeting each month, and residents get just 3 minutes to comment. Sharon Eastvold of North Silver Street wants to know what changes, if any, you would pledge to make in the way that the commission provides for public comment at its meetings.
Hold the meetings in the evening so working people can attend. Also, oh my goodness, I'm losing myself. And just make sure that we have town hall meetings, that we get the information to everybody about what we're having the meeting about. If it's about building, you show the plans, you talk about it. If it's about Ralph Edwards Park, you have a meeting in this room. You don't have a meeting, a public hearing at 9 a.m. in the city commission chambers that no people who have children can attend. And we are fast-tracking things. We are, in the paper, it says we're in a hurry. We gotta slow down and we gotta talk to everybody in town and find out how they feel about it and get their ideas and incorporate them. Because there's a lot of really smart people and people with common sense in this town.
Thank you, Ms. Marone. Mr. Tolley, same question to you. How would you change, if at all, the public comment process in town?
I'm in agreement with Ms. Barone. We definitely need to change the meeting times. As a person who works during the day, I can't attend meetings unless I take time off of work, so I'm operating on a loss immediately to be involved in city governance, whether I'm a participating citizen or a governing member. We have to change the time, make it more convenient for the citizenry as a whole. I understand why they cut down the public comment time, but I do not think it was appropriate at all to limit your voice in city governance. You absolutely have to be allowed your input, whether we do that in a different format than speaking at the commission meetings, or we just open it up and have rules about public comment. You have to be given your voice back in city governance.
Thank you. Bill Fink, same question to you. How would you change, if at all, the public comment process?
Again, evening meetings. We need to have the people there. That doesn't happen in the morning. Again, we need to have town hall meetings where it's the public asking the questions, directing us as a commission, not the other way around, the commission always dictating to the public. Other things we could do. We could put out more information through the newspaper or even on the internet, but that takes someone willing to do it. Right now, there doesn't appear to be that person. What else can we do? Now, there's a lot of things that we can study to work, but we need more transparency. We cannot live with this. You've got 3 minutes to talk, and you may not know if anybody's listening to you anyway. I've seen them fall asleep.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. Gina Kelly, you're up next. How would you change, if at all, the public comment process?
We're all in agreement here that we are all in agreement that what we need to do is bring back public comment to both meetings. I also agree with changing the times of the meetings. I think it's terribly unfair to working people or people with families in this town that they can't attend these meetings. One of the issues that I have is that there's not good communication from the city about what they're planning to do. And I'm going to use the Ralph Edwards Park that was discussed at last week's commission meeting about that. As far as we know, the farmers market fiesta, the public was not really consulted. So I went to the city website to look for, maybe they had a recreation board meeting where they talked about this. That page has not been updated since 2015. I have no idea if they had a public meeting. So they're underutilizing social media and they're underutilizing their website. They could get the word out on issues so much better if they would just use the technology available.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Moving on to round 3, these are individual questions, a different question for each of you. Members of the public submitted all these questions. Mr. Tolley, you're first. Sarah on Pine Street says, my neighborhood has been allowed to go downhill. Out my window, I can see trash and old cars accumulating in vacant lots. There's somebody living illegally in a fifth wheel, and I even see evidence of puppy mills and drug abuse. What can an individual commissioner do to make sure the city's building codes and nuisance and noise laws are enforced?
That's an excellent question, and I think it's a very important answer. This is something we all need to understand. One individual commissioner does not have the authority to institute those changes. As a body, the 5 commissioners are responsible for the city manager, so they can give directives to the city manager, who then disseminates that information to the responsible departments. As an individual commissioner, you cannot enforce city changes. It has to be done through the body. That being said, there are multiple issues there that need to be addressed, and I cannot possibly in 30 seconds touch on them all. But If elected, I would definitely have my phone and my email are being checked constantly throughout the day. If those problems are presented to me, I will pass them on to the appropriate channels, and I will follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Tully. Mr. Fink, Wendy Tremaine of Pershing Street believes that the city should require all new construction to have gray water reuse, rainwater catchment, and south-facing orientation for solar gain. What kinds of sustainable building requirements, if any, would you support adding to the municipal code?
Living in Maine before I moved here, I was off-grid electric. We had gray water system, and we caught water. So I would actually be in favor of that. Now it comes down to a question, who pays for it? I was
Go ahead.
tossing about the idea of the thought process of fixing our water infrastructure right now. We have asbestos water lines. That just isn't good for us. Wouldn't it be better and cheaper in the long run to put tanks, poly tanks, in the yards of individual homes and have a water service deliver them water that is of good quality, and then they can pump it themselves? Cost-wise, it would be actually to the benefit of the tanks than installing new water lines.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kelly, the next question is for you. It comes from TRC Realtor Sid Bryan. Do you support a proposal currently under discussion to build a new spaceport visitor center out by Walmart? If so, what is the appropriate role for the city to play in its relocation funding and design? And if not, why do you not support that idea?
Well, that's kind of an easy one. I don't support it because Spaceport doesn't support it. They have put in their ICIP that they're going to build their own visitor center out by the gates. That would be redundant. The state doesn't have the money to spend on another visitor center. It would not be funded by our taxpayers. That would be funded by the state of New Mexico. So that's clearly in their wheelhouse. But no, I don't support it. Not in the least.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Ms. Barone. Your question is from Randall and Collie Sue Lawson of Friends of the Pool. They report that the cost of keeping the pool in working order amounts to, on average, about $190,000 a year. If elected, how would you go about determining whether to continue this expenditure or build a new pool or propose some cost-saving measure?
I'm for building a new pool for the kids in town and let everybody else use it also. Up near the campus would be great. The city could sell that property in the hot water district. They should sell all their 300 properties and use some of that money. I was at the pool the other day, just looking to see how you get in it because I don't use it. And it was a door on the side. It looked like it was going to an outhouse. I mean, it was amazing. We've wasted way too much money on the pool. And I'd like to see all the waste out. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to round 4. This is one question that will go to all of you. This is a question on infrastructure, and we're going to begin with Mr. Fink. It's a fact. The city is spending about $10 million over the next year to fix water lines, most of it in the downtown area. Suzanne Carlstead on Grape Street wonders whether it would have been possible to also fix the sewer pipes and bury the electric wires and fiber optic cables as long as the pavement is all torn up. And her question is, what can City Commission do to ensure that city departments regularly engage in long-term planning?
Well, it would be possible to include sewer and fiber optic in this project. It's just the commissioners have to find funding to do it. Now, that being said, is there even funding available in the state to do this or in the city? So it would be possible, it's more practical to do it all at once rather than coming back in 3 years, digging these streets all up again to put a new sewer line in, to put new drainage in. That is just irresponsible from the commissioners to allow something like this to happen. I know we have a $9.8 million grant loan package, but if we can't do it right the first time, it's not worth doing.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, the same question to you. How can City Commission ensure that city departments regularly engage in long-term planning?
Well, long-term planning takes a lot of time and a lot of community input, and they also have to have the funds to even figure out what you're going to do. You can make the greatest plan in the world, but without money to back it up, you're kind of stuck. I did find it interesting that people are suggesting that we bury our fiber optic cable and our electric lines when, you know, you dig about 2 feet in this town, downtown, and you're hitting hot water. I think that would be kind of a challenge. I'm sure it's doable if you have the money. You can do anything if you have the money. There's funding through the USDA, Colonia's grants, and the Water Board. Those are low-interest loans. But like I said before, we need to build our tax base so we don't have to keep borrowing money. It's just, it's work. It's going to be a big job, and I don't know that it can be tackled in a short term. It's got to take a lot of planning over a lot of years, unfortunately.
Thank you. Ms. Barone, same question to you.
It seems like a lot of money for a town that's dying. When we came here, it was almost 7,000. Now it's maybe 5,000. We'll find out during the census. We already owe $39 million and more for the hospital. That's on the backs of everybody in this county, in this town, and more, they keep borrowing and borrowing, and then on the other hand, we're wasting money on Main Street, $35,000 a year, plus the money they get from other places, and all different kinds of other projects that are not using the comprehensive plan and not thinking about how the town fits together. We don't have precincts and we don't have representation by city commissioners from a geographical area. So we don't have a commissioner we can even talk to. We have to talk to the whole commission. And I would like to see all the commissioners get interns from Hot Springs High School to help them out in their offices.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Talley, same question to you. What can the City Commission do to ensure that city departments regularly engage in long-term planning?
To ensure that city departments regularly engage in long-term planning, I believe that the commission should have the city manager request that the department heads be present at a meeting that discusses long-term planning. Anytime there's a major infrastructure project that we're looking at, I think that the department heads from the city ought to be present, ought to be giving their input, ought to be involved in the decision-making and the planning process.
Thank you. Moving on to round 5, and in which accountability is the theme. This is our last round of questions for the position 4 candidates. We'll start with Ms. Kelly. Fact: the City of Truth or Consequences has no dedicated social services staff or budget beyond a small subsidy to the senior center. And yet TRC has significant social problems, such as the 200 public school students recently identified as homeless. Raven Willow, the volunteer crisis coordinator at Messiah Healing, asks, do you believe city government has a responsibility to address social service needs that are unmet by the county? And if so, how would we fund those programs?
Yes, I do think that we do have an obligation to help people that need it. 200 students homeless, that's a number that I'm familiar with because it was the same way in Ruidoso. You know, you can only count on nonprofit help for so much. There are grants out there. There are grants out there to help with these problems. Every day I get emails about available grants, and so that's something we could look at. But yeah, I think we do need a social services department. Then again, though, you're creating another position in the city that you have to find funding for. But I agree with that. I agree that we do have that obligation. It's not right to leave people out in the cold.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Ms. Barone, the same question to you. Do you believe that city government has a responsibility to address social service needs that are unmet by the county? And if so, how would we fund those programs?
I think that this goes with the code enforcement issue. And we need to identify all the problem properties. The person who asked about that earlier said that. And you need to turn them in. We need to have a way to find who's living there, if they need help, if they're having problems, if they're sick, if they're elderly, if they're having mental problems, whatever we have to offer them. And we need to find also to have a human needs assessment. in this town and find out the kind of people we need to attract here, the kind of jobs we need. We need to sit down as a community and talk about the people we need. We don't need statements from the county saying that we detest immigrants, that we don't like wilderness. We have to start being a really together town to live in and take care of all of our needs, human needs first. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barone. Mr. Talley, same question to you. Social services.
John, I'm going to admit I have a bit of a bias when it comes to this question. My wife and I have personally given homes to several teenagers who were not able to stay with their parents any longer, so this is a very personal issue for me. So that being said, I absolutely believe we have a responsibility to the least of these. And as a community, if we are not taking care of those who are doing without, we are failing as a community. As far as funding, I am not too proud to admit that I don't have an answer for that. And that is something that I have been researching already personally, because as I said, this is a personal mission of mine. And I do feel very passionately about that. So when I have an answer, I'm going to be certain to share that with the entire community, because this is something we as a community have to step up and take care of.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. Mr. Fink, same question to you. Do you believe the city government has a responsibility to address social service needs that are unmet by the county? And if so, how do we fund it?
We have a responsibility. The funding portion is just unfathomable to me at this time. We can look at things, we can look for grants, we can raise the awareness of the community, because a lot of the community refuses to accept that this actually exists in this town. But we do have a responsibility.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to the closing statements of these four candidates. Each of you will have 45 seconds to solidify your support, summarize your positions, and Sophie Barone will begin.
I'd like to really see this town become beautiful. In 17 years, we've seen it fall apart a little bit, and there's a lot of neglect here. We want it fixed. I would like, personally, my property value to go up. Maybe other people don't, but it's worth less than it was when I bought it and fixed it up. I'd never get my money again. And we need to make a place when people drive down the street, they go, oh, this is nice. Like when we first moved here 17 years ago, it's clean, it's pleasant. And then all of a sudden it just starts piling up with neglect. We have to get together and we have to make sure that our town is just the best little town. I also put it in to the House and Garden TV show for a remodeling town. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Barone. Brendan Talley, you're up next. You have 45 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for being a part of this tonight. This wouldn't happen without community involvement, so thank you all. I believe I would be a strong candidate because I am connected to this community. And when I say that, I mean across a broad spectrum. I have connections to multiple different subcultures within this town, and as an elected official, I would remember that I represent all of you. I would stand and work for all of you. Whether you supported me or not, whether you voted for me, whether you ran against me, my job would be to represent all of you. I'm Brendan Talley. I'm one of us for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. William Fink, Bill, you're up. 45 seconds.
Again, I am Bill. In my previous life as a milk safety specialist, working for the federal government, doing consulting work here and there, I was a consensus builder. We had to come up with ways that the industry, from the processing to the farm side, would all work together. We would gather info, and then we would act on that info. This town needs to gather info. We need to work on that info. We need to forget just pie in the sky, because putting lipstick on a pig's face just isn't going to cut it.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. Moving on to a closing statement from Gina Kelly.
Great, thank you so much. First of all, I want to commend everybody that's running for office. You've stepped up to the plate, and I can't commend you enough for doing that. My hope is that after this election is over, the people that don't win will then volunteer to serve on our boards. One of the big issues we have in this town is we do not have people to fill our boards. And that's how you get the public involved, is you get a cross-section of people from the community. I just want to say that I have a lot of experience working with local government and especially with state agencies. And I believe that if I were to be elected, I could hit the ground running and start working for you on day one.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Thank you to William Fink, Gina Kelly, Sophie Barone, and Brenda Tolley. That concludes our question and answer session with the position 4 candidates. Position 5 candidates.